A declining US economy, together with manipulation and exploitation of that economy by powerful minority forces, and the approaching end of the age of oil. 4. Increasing Chinese economic and military power and a resurgent Russia cooperating with China. 5. Growing bilateral economic relations between the US, Indonesia particularly, and as well other Asian nations. 6. The sustained corporatist American exploitation of Australia as manifested by the Australian-American Free Trade Agreement, AUSTRA, and the intended horrifying Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. It seems that the American corporatists, with their world dominance, would like to see the world divided into 4 free trade zones: North and South America, the Asian Pacific area, including Australia, the African continent, and Europe. The recent revolutionary unrest in Kiev, Ukraine, may have originated as a result of American free trade aspirations in Eastern Europe. 7. The factor of issue linkage between Australia's challenged economic welfare vis-à-vis the US on the one hand, and the dependence of Australia on American protectionism on the other. 8. The possibly increasing conservatism of an increasingly inward-looking American people. However, that is not to say that we should ever prejudice our security by failing to maintain American friendship and support, or at least the bluff and illusion of it. We must at all times be extremely careful and diplomatic in our relations with the USA. In this regard, the recent views of Mr. Malcolm Fraser, effectively that we should distance ourselves from the USA, notwithstanding the deteriorating circumstances of the Asian Pacific area, are unfathomable, alarming, and subversive. It should also always be remembered that Mr. Fraser was more prone to ambivalence and at worst radical and irresponsible behaviour concerning ethnic matters, including his infamous Lebanese concession, which gave us the severe and permanent Islamic problem in southwest Sydney, and the festering, although abating, situation in Cabramatta with its drug trade, ethnic gangs, and the eventual murder of a traditional Australian politician by a Vietnamese. Again, Fraser became virtually an advocate for open borders in relation to refugees and asylum seekers, and he institutionalized the policy of multiculturalism, as well as becoming heavily involved in racial interests or issues in South Africa and also Zimbabwe, where he was instrumental in the accession of the pernicious Robert Mugabe. As regards multiculturalism, given Australia's necessary immigration policies, this will occur inevitably and naturally, and can be a very good thing, but it must not regress to state-sponsored, institutionalised, separatist tribalism, which will eventually break up Australia and render us helpless before external forces. With regard to multiculturalism, it is obvious that the Australian Labor Party is effectively emulating the immigration policies of British Labor in order to change the composition of Australian society and the electorate here, to favour Labor and destroy the coalition in the longer term. This trend will be enhanced by the fragmentation and weakening produced by the institutionalised, state-sponsored, subsidised multiculturalism pursued by the Labor Party, preferred by them to the multiculturalism which gradually, naturally and inevitably results from the mixing of races, peoples and cultures. This Labor strategy was confirmed on television on the 21st of July 2013 when Labor's Jason Clare revealed that the Labor Party was intending to increase the asylum seeker intake from 20,000 to 27,000 people per year, again ostensibly to reduce the influx of boat people. This did not eventuate when they made the increase to 20,000, so why should it result from a further increase to 27,000? The answer is that they simply want the votes for Labor that will flow from increased immigration of people, most of whom will neither assimilate nor integrate, as happened in Britain. The British Labour Party told the people they intended to bring in 13,000 immigrants a year for the good of the economy. Instead, they brought in immigrants at the rate of 250,000 a year, peaking at a total of 3,500,000, and only 1 in 5 of those immigrants was from the European Union. Subsequently, Andrew Neither, the speechwriter for the party, revealed that this deception was a conspiracy under Brown, Blair and Miliband to radically change traditional British society and culture and to destroy the Conservative Party through diversity. It is possible that Fraser's international, seemingly obsessive involvement in ethnic issues may be linked to his own ethnic background. Whatever the reason, instead, in Australia he should have been attending to the then prevailing crisis in industrial relations, the decline in the resources boom, high inflation and unemployment, and the ongoing effects of the 1973 oil crisis. These factors are leading to the end of his government in the 1983 federal election. The fact that one wears pinstripe suits and frequents the Melbourne Club is not necessarily an indication of political integrity, or even integrity in the more basic sense of morality. Fraser's exceedingly commendable actions, on the other hand, included the leadership in the sacking of the anarchical Whitlam government, at least nominal resistance to economic rationalism and the neoliberalism of Mr. John Howard and the so-called Dries in the coalition government, consideration of how Whitlam's unlawful creation of a parallel federal constitution and government and institutions thereunder for socialist, communist, political and commercial purposes might be reversed. Preservation of the coalition between the Liberal and the Country parties and the establishment of the television channel Special Broadcasting Service, SBS. Fraser has only himself to blame for his mismanagement of his government, and this makes his bitterness and treachery towards his former party since his retirement all the more reprehensible. In particular, his alliance with the treacherous and disloyal to Australia Sarah Hanson-Young and the Greens Party to prevent the coalition from gaining control of the federal Senate at the 2013 federal election was contemptible, despicable and bizarre. The Greens, of course, are not only destructively radical, they also have a strong communist background and links. One thing that Miss Hanson-Young needs to learn is that, unfortunately, the historical and current truth is that international affairs are conducted on the basis of national self-interest. The international environment is not benign. When your country's borders are completely secure, the country's sovereignty is assured and its economy is strong, then you can start to think about demonstrating largesse to peoples internationally and not before. However, Sarah Hanson-Young is not alone in manifestly being disloyal towards her country. For example, there are at least 2 legal advocates effectively favouring open borders for Australia, and of course they stand to gain personally at Australia's expense. One of them is Professor Julian Burnside, AO, QC, and the other is the solicitor, Mr. David Mann. One must ask of these 2 men, are their hearts in being Australian? Mr. Mann, whose family took refuge in Australia from the horrors of the German Nazis and the Holocaust, in particular might be asked, would he be prosecuting his agenda if he were a citizen of and living in Israel? Does Mr. Mann feel any gratitude at all towards the country which has given him and his family sanctuary? The agenda of his Refugee and Immigration Legal Centre, RILC, apparently involves not merely the application of Australia's refugee and immigration laws, but a policy intent of circumventing and changing those laws, which have been primarily and properly enacted for Australia's protection. It appears that the objectives of Mr. Mann and RILC are to reshape the national agenda regarding boat people and as a result to fundamentally and radically change Australia. Moreover, this nefarious operation is being munificently financed from the public purse, albeit under the auspices of legislation. Surely the Premier of Victoria, Dr. Dennis Napthine, should be asked to review this exploitive and subversive arrangement with a view to protecting the national interest. As large amounts of funds were flowing to our ALC from the federal immigration authorities under the previous Labor government, the Coalition's Department of Immigration and Border Protection should be directed to terminate any such arrangements now extant.